Right. Gotta hold it down.
Yeah,
Good.
yeah, we're good. And a call to order the Town of Mount Desert Planning Board meeting for January 24th, 2024, and this is a continuation or a rescheduling of the hearing on January 10th due to our fabulous weather we've been having, and welcome aboard. And I'll kick it off with making some introductions and say hi to everybody out there in Zoom world, but here in the meeting hall, we've got myself, William Hanley, and Chair, we've got Gail Marshall and Alan Kimmerly, and then online, we've got Tracy Loftus Keller and Meredith Randolph. How are you guys?
Good.
Excellent. And just too, if you're on Zoom, if you could go to chat and just sign in, that would help. And then I think we all know the Zoom protocol by now. Just keep yourself on mute until we call on you, and we'll get right into this. And first item on the agenda tonight is we've got a pile of minutes to approve. I think, Alan, do you have the minutes there? If I could just rattle off the dates, but. So. Looking back, the first minutes we had to approve are from October 25th, and I was there, Tracy, Meredith, Alan, and Gail. So, and that was. Yeah, that was the determination of use thing for the Rockefellers, and then we had the other determination of use for the fleet.
Yeah.
I move approval.
Second that. All right, all those in favor?
Aye. Oh. Aye.
Meredith?
Aye.
Yay. Okay, October 25th. Done. November 8th, I was there, Alan, Tracy, Meredith, and Gail, and that was yeah, that was where we were looking at the Mount Desert Land and Garden Preserve renovation.
I move approval.
Second that.
All right, all those in favor? Aye.
Aye. Tracy Keller, aye.
Meredith Randolph, aye.
Thanks. December 13th. That December 13th was where we were just accepting the final decision and findings for the Heelway subdivision. And that, yeah, that was myself, Tracy, Meredith, Alan, and Gail.
But maybe you three should act on that.
But I think it's just us three voting on that.
Okay.
As in, so, all those in favor?
Who moved it?
Oh, yeah, did someone make a motion to accept the minutes? Tracy, it looks like you got a motion.
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes as presented from the date again is November
December.
December 13th.
the 13th. Yeah.
Meredith Randolph, I second that.
Right, and again, to clarify, we were the quorum voting on that. Dave has since moved out, so out of the town, so it's just us three. So all those in favor, Tracy,
Tracy Keller, aye.
Meredith,
Randolph, aye.
and myself, William Hanley, aye. Okay, there's that, and then we had.
December 20th.
Yes, December 20th. Alan, Gail, Meredith, myself, and Tracy were there, and that was just, we were talking through the Luso amendments with Noel.
I move approval of the minutes.
Second.
All right. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Tracy,
Tracy Keller, I.
Meredith?
Randolph, I.
All right, thanks. All right,
We have January 3rd also.
I don't think we have
No,
those
that's it. I
yet.
think that's it, isn't it?
Yeah.
All that on my table. They've been sent to us, but we don't.
Yeah.
Draft them.
I don't think we're there yet.
Okay.
All right. Everybody good?
Yep.
All right, let's soldier on. All right. Item 3 on the agenda tonight, we have conditional use approval applications, and the first one is conditional use approval application 13/2023. The owners are the Sound Trust, W. Henschel and P. Trackman, trustees. Agent Mike Gillis, PLA, Acadia Landscape and Design. Location is 4 Huntington Road, Northeast Harbor, tax map 24, lot 124. The zone is village commercial and the purpose is section 6B6, fences and walls. And we had a site inspection at 4:15. And was this one advertised and abutters duly
It
notified?
was advertised, Saturday, Sunday, January 13, 14, 2024 in the Bangor Daily News. And abutters were notified.
Great. Yeah, we have an abutters list.
Yes, we do have abutters.
All right, and just on conflict of interest, I'm just gonna note that I did work for our firm worked for the owners 2 years ago. We did some design work and have not worked for them since. Don't have any active projects with them and just wanted to put that on the table. And if the board has any issue with that, let me know. Tracy, you're okay with
Yes,
that?
I'm okay with that. Yes.
Meredith, you're okay with that? Meredith,
Sorry, I was on mute. Yes, that's fine.
thank you. All right, let's get into it. So we had
Did you vote on that there's no bias?
yes. Should we have a vote that there's no bias and I can continue as chair for the application?
So moved.
Second.
All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Tracy,
Tracy Keller, I.
Meredith?
Randolph, I.
All right, thank you. Let's do it. So we had, let's first hear about the site visit we had today. And Alan, why don't we hear of your observations from that site visit?
Well, we went to the site and it does abut the Kimball Inn and mainly the restaurant area. And I can see how they would want to have a proper fence against there. There's also employee housing that's right abutting them also.
Mhm.
So
Yeah, there's a lot going on the east side of
yes,
the property.
dumpster,
Yeah.
big propane tank, you know, relatively unsightly.
Mhm. Gail, you were there too. Any observations from the visit?
The purported location of the fence is all marked out and flagged and. There's been a little bit of clearing of small scrubby brush, but our understanding is the intention is to not clear trees and brush, and there'll likely be some others planted once the fence is in.
Mhm.
The fence that's there now is in various states, so either isn't there with respect to the portion that leads up on the front end of the property down the road, or is in the, shall we say, various states of repair.
Mhm.
And, I mean, a replacement would be an improvement, it seems.
Mhm. All right, well, I'll turn it over to the agent, Mr. Gillis, and perhaps he could enlighten us more about the project.
Sure. My name is Mike Gillis. I'm the landscape architect representing the owner. This is Winnie. Her husband Philip is on Zoom.
Yep.
So it's a pretty straightforward request. The owners abut the commercial use of the restaurant, and there's a lot of activity and noise and whatnot. So we're asking the board to review our application for a 10-foot height fence to help mitigate some of those nuisances from the abutting property. That's pretty much it. You saw the layout. I flagged it all out so you could, and staked out the corners so you could see which direction it's gonna run. And we're not planning on cutting any additional trees. If anything, we might skirt the fence around a couple of big trees to make sure we keep those
Right.
as well.
Mhm. Tracy, Meredith, any questions for Mr. Gillis?
No, I have none.
I don't have any, this is mostly along the side of a parking lot, right?
Pretty much,
Correct.
So it doesn't seem very controversial.
The only other thing to note is that much of the existing fence that's already there is already 8.5 feet tall. So in that area, you're talking about another 1.5 feet over what's already there. And our understanding is where it takes a jog down along the front end by the road, the request is only to have it be 6 feet, not 10 feet.
Correct.
I'll open it up to public comment. If anybody out there in Zoom world has any questions for the applicant, now's your chance. Noel, you good?
I'm good.
All right. Not hearing any public comment, I'll close public comment and we'll get on with it. So first thing we'll need to do is find out if the application is complete. So we need a motion on that.
I move the application is complete.
Second.
All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
Tracy,
Tracy Keller, I.
Meredith?
Randolph, I.
All right, and then, oh, what do you guys think about maybe using the short form?
I make a
Yes.
motion to use the short form.
Tracy Keller, second.
All right, all those in favor, Meredith,
Randolph, I.
Tracy,
Tracy Keller, I.
and here,
Aye.
short form it is. I have the application in front of me. I have the short form checklist in front of me.
Bill, this is Heidi. Do you want to make a motion to approve at this point?
Absolutely. And that was the next thing I was going to do is, let's do our little circuitous motion to approve. Do I have a motion?
To approve the application. We need a
Tracy
second.
Keller, second.
Tracy got the second, and then we press the pause button on the approval and we go through the review of the application. So let's do it. So. All right, short form checklist time. So let's do it. Section 6A, general performance standards, compatibility. Application talks about the 10-foot height fence, 220 feet of length. There's already an existing 8.5 foot fence. See application. Erosion and sedimentation control. They're not disturbing any soil for this project, so see application. Highway safety, NA. Impact on town services, NA. Land suitability. And that talks about, the soils upon the which proposed uses or structure can be established or maintained without causing adverse environmental impacts. There's already a fence there and they say NA. Lighting outdoors, there's no lighting proposed. NA 6A7 stormwater. Application says NA, and I would assume because there's no alteration of the existing grades and
Correct.
6A8. Vegetation applicant says NA, and I would assume that's because from previously hearing that you're not removing any vegetation to install the fence. And again, there's already a fence there. 6A9, dust, fumes, vapors, odors, and gases. Let's see, NA. So the findings of fact are that they are as presented by the applicant and attached application, and the conclusion laws that the proposed use is in compliance with all standards of section 6A, for which the standard has been met.
Tracy Keller, so moved.
Second.
All right, all those in favor, Tracy,
Tracy Keller, I.
Meredith,
Randolph, I.
and here,
Aye.
aye. All right, section 6B, specific performance standards for activities and land uses. Most of these are gonna be NA. It's 6B1 agriculture, NA, 6B2 air landing sites. Yeah, why are we still got that? No.
No comment.
6B7 excavation. NA. And 6B8 is why we're here, fences and walls. And the applicant talks about the proposed fence, it is taller than 6 feet, the location is, it's not, one point of clarification is that it's not 6 feet off the right-of-way line, because the right-of-way is owned by the applicant as well. And that the new fence is going in the same location, or the replacement fence is going in the same location as the existing fence. So, see application. It's 6B16 sign regulations, there are no signs. 6B18, you're not putting up a cell tower. 6B19, you're not asking for chickens. 6B20, you're not proposing a food truck. 6B21, you're not building a rooming house. And 6B22, you're not building a hotel or a motel. And so the findings of fact are that the proposed use will include none of the specific activities or land uses described in section 6B except for 6B8 fences and walls. And the conclusion laws that section 6B is not applicable except for section 6B8, for which the standard has been met.
So,
Tracy Keller, second.
All right, all those in favor, Tracy,
Tracy Keller, I.
Meredith,
Randolph, I.
and here.
Aye.
Aye. 6B6 is shoreline zoning requirements and
60.
section 6C is shoreline zoning requirements. And we're not in the shoreline zone. We are in village commercial. So the findings of fact are that the proposed lot is entirely out of the shoreline zone. And the conclusion was that section 6C is not applicable.
So moved.
Second.
All right. All those in favor here?
Aye.
Aye. Online, Tracy,
Tracy Keller, I.
Meredith.
Randolph, I.
All right, because it's not in the shoreline zone, we don't have to do section 5.9. Are there any permit conditions to this one?
Apply for a building permit.
Yep. So that's pretty standard stuff, not really a permit condition. So then let's circle back and to the 8-track and press play. Back to our approval vote. All those in favor of approving the application as submitted? Aye.
Tracy
Online,
Keller, aye.
Meredith?
Randolph, I.
All right, congratulations.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. You too. Much more.
He's on Dave's on there still.
I just.
Cross out Dave. I don't know what's.
Thank you.
Yeah. Okay, there's that. Keep our files. All right, and our other favorite application to review, chickens. All right, and that is conditional use approval application 14/2023. Owner is Thomas M. Boatwright and Kelly Marie O'Neill. Location is 8 Cobbles End, Hall Quarry. Tax map 7, lot 32, zone is residential 1. Purpose is section 3.4, animal husbandry 2, non-commercial. We had a site inspection at 3:30. And again, was this one advertised and?
It was in the Bangor Daily News, January 15, 14, 2024, and abutters were contacted.
Yep, great. Right, we had a site inspection at 3:30 and Gail, Al and I attended it and Gail, would you care to share your observations from the site inspection?
Yes, it appears obvious that there already are chickens in residence, so this is something that apparently is a after the fact application. The chicken coop is well away from the eyes of other neighbors. It's right in the yard. There's no lighting issues. There's no illumination. It seems well constructed and seems to meet the conditions of the ordinance. I don't know about who's in the coop. I didn't meet them, but yeah, it seemed pretty straightforward and quiet and well made.
Any observations, Alan?
I concur. It was a very nice chicken coop and they all looked very happy in there.
Some admirable architecture for the chicken coop for sure. Yeah, it was fully enclosed and roofed, had the see-through corrugated siding, you know, it was
In amongst the trees.
in amongst the trees. So, all right. Kelly, would you like to add anything to that?
I just wanted to apologize. We weren't there. We were at work. I'm sorry we couldn't make it. My husband built it. There's only 4 chickens that live in there and we're sorry that it was after the fact that we're seeking approval.
Well, at least we'll know what we're approving.
Yeah. Yeah, no, it was a nice chicken coop. So I'll open it for public comment. Is there any comment about the chickens that 8 Cobbles Way. Cobbles End, sorry.
Can I have a quick question? Since Noel is on here, we get a lot of people post chicken in residence. And I'm wondering if it is not clear where you need, it seems to me that when I've read the code that people get confused. They think that it's just in town that they need to apply. And whether it's that we need to do something about the way the language is written in the code to make it clearer as to who has to show up for chickens.
We can look at it, Meredith, and see if it needs any clarity for sure.
Okay, thanks.
Or Meredith, there's a whole re-envisioned chicken approval process that doesn't require planning board approval.
I would second that.
Mhm.
Does Noel know about that?
Oh, well, since,
Is that what you're asking us to work on that, Bill?
it's not a formal ask, but maybe
Was
it's.
it really fun process to go through the first time around?
Mhm.
It seems to me that it's reasonable only in the context of giving the neighbors the opportunity to say, could you not put your chickens underneath my window? You know, things like that. That's why I think it's reasonable to bring it to the board.
That's the usual context of public input on chickens and,
Yes.
or what are you doing with what chickens produce besides eggs?
And what are we gonna do if we don't have them come to planning board? How are we gonna make sure that there's peace in the neighborhood?
Well, I think they should continue to come to planning board because I get complaints that people don't take care of their chickens and they let them roam around the property and tear up people's nice landscape yards that they pay big money to put on their property.
Yeah, I think it's reasonable that it comes to planning board. I think it just maybe somehow in the code, it just needs to be clear that people need to come, because it just seems like a ton of people. This is how it's done. People show up and they say, my chickens are in residence.
Yeah, so this is section 6B19.
That's just in town.
Yeah.
Commercial.
Right.
And I
But
think
the
that uses
permitted,
people.
the permitted use chart indicates non-commercial animal husbandry one and two, and whether a C requires conditional use in the zoning district. It's just, they need to go to the land use zoning ordinance to see whether chickens are A, allowed, and B, who has jurisdiction in reviewing them.
I think
So
it's
I
because we have that section that's specifically for in town, that people see that and say, oh, I'm not in town.
Right.
Mhm. In town being the village commercial district.
Right.
Right. Just there's got to be something that needs to be clarified there, because this just happens all the time.
You know, every time I do kind of allude to maybe having a different process for this, I'm continually reminded of how many layers to the cake the chicken thing is.
It's
Well,
complex.
let's progress with these chickens.
Yeah, so let's soldier on here. So first, so I opened it up to public comment, none heard. I'm gonna close public comment. And then should we perhaps have a motion about finding the application complete?
I make a motion to find the application complete.
Second?
All right, all those in favor online, Meredith,
Randolph, I.
Tracy,
Tracy Keller, I.
and then in the room,
Aye.
aye. And then, I don't know, maybe the short form for this one.
Oh, yeah.
So, you want a motion for that?
Mhm.
So moved.
Second.
All right, all those in favor in the room?
Aye.
Aye, online, Tracy,
Tracy Keller, I.
Meredith,
Randolph, I.
and then we'll have a vote to approve.
So moved.
Second.
we press the pause button and let's go through the review of the application.
There's no conflict of interest on this. one.
And there's no conflict of interest with this chicken application, is there? None heard. And, all right, reading glasses. Short form checklist. Application. Compatibility, section 6A, general performance standards. The structure is approximately 120 square feet. It's a wood frame, some wood siding. It's got the mostly clear roof and sides. It's got a hardware cloth enclosure. It's about 20 feet from the house. We have a little map submitted. See application. Erosion and sedimentation control. Unclip this. That's on flat ground with no erosion or sedimentation issues. And it's already there and it's got vegetation all around it. So it's the application. Highway safety. NA. Impact on town services. Applications of NA. Land suitability. Seems like it's in a pretty good spot. You know, it's located on flat ground in an area previously used for parking and there's no erosion or anything around it and it's there. So 6A5 CA application. 6A6 lighting outdoor. There is none. It's NA. Stormwater, 6A7. NA. Vegetation, 6A8. It's there. NA. And 6A9, dust fumes, vapors, odors, and gases. And just for the record, I guess we gotta at least ask, what do you do with what chickens produce other than eggs?
We can. We put it in a compost pile with other brush and leaves and grass clippings and that sort of thing, and it's
And
It's
pine shavings.
pine
And
shavings.
then we age it, and then I add it to our garden, our
Mhm.
flower garden.
You're right,
It's not a tremendous amount with 4 birds.
yeah. Okay, so, yeah. No, the 4 chickens are doing well.
A big house, like it looks like a tiny home.
It, yeah, at Bar Harbor, it probably would be. So 6A9 dust fumes, vapors, odors, and gases, NA. And then the findings of fact are as presented by the applicant in the attached application. The conclusion was that the proposed use is in compliance with all sections of section 6A for which the standard has been met.
I would so move.
Second.
All right, all those in favor in the room?
Aye.
Aye. Online, Tracy,
Tracy Keller, I.
Meredith?
Randolph, I.
All right, section 6B. Specific performance standards for activities and land uses. So 6B1, agriculture's NA, 6B, yeah, they're all NA except NA, 6B7, NA, 6B8, fences and walls, NA, 6B16, sign regulations, NA, 6B18, wireless communication facilities, NA, 6B19, animal husbandry 2. That's the in-town one. That's,
Yeah, shoreline commercial and village.
yeah, that's even NA. No food trucks, NA, rooming houses or hotels or motels, so the whole thing is NA. And the proposed use will findings of fact are that the proposed use include none of the specific activities or land uses described in section 6B, and the conclusion law section 6B is not applicable.
So moved.
Second.
All right, all those in favor in the room?
Aye.
Aye. Online, Tracy,
Tracy Keller, I.
Meredith.
Randolph, I.
All right, and it is not in the shoreline zone, so it is NA, the findings of fact or proposed lot is entirely outside the shoreline zone. Conclusion law is that section 60 is not applicable.
So moved.
Second.
All right, all those in favor in the room?
Aye.
Aye. Online, Tracy,
Tracy Keller, I.
Meredith.
Randolph, I.
So then where it's not in the shoreline zone, we don't do section 5.9. Are there any permit conditions to this one? It's there.
You gotta apply for an after fact building permit, that's all.
We gotta apply for an after fact building permit. That's not really a permit condition. So circling back to the approval vote. All those in favor in the room of approving the application as submitted?
Aye.
Aye. Online, Tracy,
Tracy Keller, I.
Meredith,
Randolph, I.
congrats, Kelly.
We'll be over for omelets.
Yeah,
Okay, thank you, everyone.
yeah.
Thank you.
I've gotta get like, what do they call the dual
Progressives.
progressives?
I have good news and bad news.
They always go like this.
Yeah, you're always,
My dad had tried, he was like, always looking all over.
I have like 10 pairs of reading glasses and I never find them when I need them.
I still have reading glasses, even though I
Yeah.
have progressives. These are the best ones.
Bill, try having only one pair of reading glasses. Then you actually have to keep track of them. Having 10 is where your problem is.
Yeah, I know. They're like in my car and the.
Yeah, no, you gotta reduce yourself to one important pair.
I don't know if I could do that, Meredith. I'd probably sit on them.
You can do
Yeah.
it.
All right, so we've got, next item on the agenda is other, is. Noel, are you here for other?
Yeah, but also look at your agenda, there's the meet and greet, of a potential alternate board member, but I don't know.
Yeah, are they,
Yes,
I guess we'll bypass that until this person can be present.
yeah, so we were gonna have a meet and greet for an alternate, member application, but, it's just us. So.
Right.
So
roads were slippery.
roads were slippery. So Noel, I guess you're up.
Great.
Or-
Well, I think we were just gonna go over quickly to review the land use ordinance amendments, and at the February 14th meeting is when we're having our first public hearing for the land use ordinance amendments, and then the one after that, we've also reserved for Luso related articles. So maybe I'll just pull up on the screen what's coming your way.
Yeah.
We haven't actually worked through all the subdivision ordinance yet, so that's something to discuss perhaps at the end. But I'll just gonna review where we are. And most everybody's already, this is sort of repetitive for some folks, but just to give you a heads up. Okay, can everybody see that?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
Um,
Go ahead.
I can zoom in a little bit so it's easier to read. How's that? All right.
Really
so,
Looking,
The first one is many, if not all of these have been reviewed by the Land Use Ordinance Committee already. There's a few things that Kim and Andy and I are still tweaking around. Kim, we have a meeting with Andy on Friday? No, tomorrow,
Yeah.
to go over a few things. And then I have drafts of everything that I'll just send you by the end of the week. Or most of the things that we've decided to go forward with. All right, so the first one is we're gonna propose some corrections to the land use ordinance and the public sewer ordinance to have correct references to each other, and also currently in the planning board, in the Luso, it grants the planning board the ability to waive the requirement that properties that are within 200 feet connect to the town's, the public sewer system. In the sewer ordinance, it's actually the Board of Selectmen's responsibility to do that. So we're correcting the Luso to make it a Board of Selectmen responsibility rather than planning board. I'm just going to go through them, Bill, unless you want to pause and ask questions. Do you want me to pause and ask questions at each one, or will you guys just interrupt me with questions?
No, you just gotta spell echo, right?
Yep, that's true. That's in the memo, but not the.
Yeah, there you go.
I'm gonna zoom out a little bit so you guys can't see any of the other edits. No. The next one is it has been determined, so there was an applicant or a property owner who did some research on Little Echo Lake regarding setbacks, and it was determined by the DEP that Little Echo Lake is a man-made water body, which does not require a 100-foot setback per shoreline zoning standards. Rather, it requires a 75-foot setback. So we're amending the remainder of the lots on Little Echo Lake that had the 100-foot setback and making them 75 feet. The next one is related to unregistered motor vehicles, where we're just clarifying the number of unregistered vehicles that you're allowed to have on your lot. Just correcting this memo a little bit, but anything more than 2 unregistered vehicles will be an automobile graveyard. So we're just clarifying in the ordinance that you're allowed no more than 2.
That was tweaked, no,
What was that?
this tweet by Andy.
Yeah, we just tweaked it. The first draft had, I think I had included the term outdoor. You're only allowed 2 unregistered vehicles outdoors on your property, and we have discussed it even at the Luso Advisory Committee level, and then the town attorney said we should just keep it as on a lot as opposed to outdoors. So it's only 2 unregistered vehicles. That's compliant with sort of state standards as it relates to automobile graveyards, as I understand it. Correct, Kim?
Yeah, that's correct.
Yep. So that's where we are with that one. The next one is one that we are still tweaking some definitions around, and it's probably something, Kim, you and I need to discuss a little bit more. I've been trying to find some different definitions for excavation, but essentially this one would provide a more example, the goal of this warrant article is really to help applicants understand what types of projects require an excavation and fill permit. So we're basically adding a definition of excavation, fill, and filling to the land use ordinance to help with that. Our original draft actually had like an EG, so an example, a list of things that might require it, but Andy suggests that we don't have those kinds of things in the land use ordinance, but rather put them in the definitions. So that's what we're working on right now for that one. The next one is individual private campsites. In the current version of the land use ordinance, it's a little unclear about what is required for like recreational vehicles and whatnot. So we're adding some clarity to the definition of individual private campsites and some of the standards for individual private campsites that are more consistent with state rules, and I think helps to clarify that yes, you can have a parking area for RVs in your individual private campsite. The next one is clarification on marine and freshwater structures. I'm actually still working on this one, but what we're gonna end up doing is if you look at section 6C7 in the ordinance, it isn't, we really need to separate marine structures from freshwater structures because they're really kind of two different things and the standards get a little jumbled. So for example, what we've talked about at the LUZO level is that like if really the standard practice for a pier is on the ocean, but in a freshwater environment, you're really doing more of a temporary, dock and float type structure. So they're kind of different set of rules and it gets real jumbly in the freshwater and marine standards. So we're going to clarify that in the draft. The next one is clarification of terms for residential dwelling units. So if you go to table 3.4 in the land use ordinance, the terms that are used for like residential dwelling and multifamily dwellings are not actually terms in the ordinance. So I'm just clarifying that table to use terms that are consistent with defined terms in the ordinance. Incidentally, it's sort of related to another topic that we'll talk about, but not sure we're going to get to it this year, but definitely next year, we should just change the terms in the ordinance to actually be more like the terms that most people think about. So instead of saying residential dwelling one family, we could just call it a single family residence, or a residential dwelling two family, we could just call it a duplex. And then there's something called a multifamily or that we should start to think about. But probably won't get there this year. Revisions to the next one is going to be revisions to the non-conforming section of the land use ordinance. And this one really is to help be more clear on who has authority to review and determine setbacks to the greatest practical extent in different parts of the ordinance. So it's to clarify that the code enforcement officer actually determines the conformity in everything but the water body setback. And then it's the planning board's responsibility. The next one is responsibility for notification. So we're just clarifying the wording of 543, that the town is actually responsible for sending out conditional use approval notices rather than the planning board. So that's literally a one-word change, warrant article, or 2 words. And then the next one is 6B11.3, deals with residential dwelling units and accessory dwelling units. And now this is to help make the LUZO more compliant with LD 2003, which does require towns to allow accessory dwelling units on every lot. So what we want to clarify is that yes, those are allowed. Add some standards for accessory dwelling units that are consistent with LD 2003. And also clarify that if you have like a duplex or a multifamily building, you're not allowed to have an accessory dwelling unit for each dwelling that's in one of those structures. You kind of already have your accessory dwelling units.
No, also, that doesn't affect the shoreline zone.
That's right. So in the shoreline zone, well, you're still allowed to have an accessory dwelling unit in the shoreline zone, but but it doesn't mean that you still have to meet all the dimensional standards. So it's essentially like getting a second dwelling unit anyway. Yeah. So the big difference in policy would be that in our current ordinance, you're allowed to have an accessory dwelling unit on pretty much every lot that's a conforming lot. In the state law, it's on every lot that's so outside the shoreline zone. We're also adding a minimum size and we kept the maximum size of 75%. Let's see, the next one is the CEO permit review timeline. I think to clarify really how much time, one has to determine, or the CEO or the code enforcement office has to determine the completeness of an application and then issue a permit. And it's really just It's no change in policy or timing. It's just clearing up, really for Kim's benefit. um, How much time you have to do those things. The next one, I'm gonna take a shot at this, Kim, and jump in if I misrepresent anything, but deals with certificates of occupancy. So when MUBEC was adopted by the state, even though the town doesn't have it, we had some building code that's now no longer applicable, but the building code was the place where the town had the certificate of occupancy requirements. So we are taking that language and putting it into the land use ordinance just to clarify what's required for certificates of occupancy. There's also some standards in there for tiny homes and manufactured homes too. Did I miss anything, Kim?
No, spot on.
Great. I'm getting the spiel down. Lot access is the next one. This is back to the drawing board on what we're dealing with lot access for lots that are either before May of 2015 or after May of 2015. Apparently the situation that we have now, which allows for the CEO and the fire chief to help make some determinations on lot safety and access, isn't legal. Like, it's too much. The town's attorney is concerned that the CEO really doesn't have the authority to do some of these things. So we have to make some adjustments to the ordinance, and Kim and I are working on trying to keep it, like, maybe we're just overthinking this whole lot access thing a little bit too much. So we're trying to find a more simple solution, and working with Andy is part of what we need to do. And it's a little more complicated than it should be, but it's still in draft format. So that's where we are with that. I don't know if I missed anything, Kim, but
You got it.
back to the drawing board. Essentially, this would be the third time or fourth time we've changed this. With the principle that we want to provide safe access for emergency vehicles, but we also don't necessarily want to require lots that have been in existence for prior to any road changes to road standards to have to go and get like some waiver if it's already there. The next one is additions and revisions to the definitions. So there's a bunch of definitions that need to be added to the land use ordinance, and some revisions to existing definitions that don't really fall into any particular specific warrant category that we've talked about above. So we're going to have a warrant article that just has a blanket list of definitions. Haven't finished that one yet because some of the definitions I can add to other ones, and we're just trying to clean that up a little bit. These are ones that we're sort of working on, but may not fit the whole, may or may not fit in depending on timing. But we're going to be, we are working on the Town of Mount Desert subdivision ordinance. I think a repeal and replace is the best. We've already worked through, the first couple of sections at the beginning of the draft. We still need to do some edits. But the primary driver for this year might end up being that we have to adopt standards for LD 2003 as it relates to that affordability section that we've already talked about once or twice. So I think we need to continue working on it, and maybe we adopt as an alternate strategy, we might just add that provision to the existing ordinance and then work on a repeal and replace for next year. But we still have a draft already done. I think we just need to spend more time with you guys on it. I don't want to rush a good one. I'd rather have a good ordinance than rush changing for this year, but that's my thought on it. If others have different opinions, happy to work on it. The Board of Selectmen have been working on a short-term rental and vacation rental licensing ordinance, and I believe they're going to be having a hearing on that early February, but I have to work with Derlin. The principle there is, the draft really creates 2 or 3 different types of short-term rentals. One short-term rental is gonna be the kind that it's your primary residence and you, are buying a short-term rental and you want to make your primary residence a short-term rental, you can do that. You just need to get a license for it. The second one is going to be what they're going to call a vacation rental, which is like an investment property. So you're just buying a property to turn around and rent it. You have to get a license, and there's a cap to the number of those that will be allowed in town. And then a third category, which we just discussed, was something called a seasonal short-term rental, which is essentially one of those like a cabin on a lake that isn't heated and it's not a seasonal use. Still can be used as a short-term rental, but has a slightly different set of standards, particularly as it relates to seasonal conversions and things like that. But it'll be treated pretty similarly to just a regular short-term rental. Kim's also kindly pointed out that the state has already adopted new septic system regulations as they relate to short-term rentals. So we need to make a reference to that in the ordinance. And we're trying to make it fairly straightforward in terms of, who's responsible for what. Who's responsible for, there's no inspection requirement. An enforcement requirement is in there. There is an enforcement provision in there. And coming along with this whole ordinance will be a whole fee structure, which theoretically can support an additional code enforcement officer. And that's not something that the planning board is going to have to weigh in on. And then we have some solar. One of the things that we really should be working on is solar provision, solar farm, like I'll call them solar farm, but the large scale solar developments and medium scale solar developments. The town has actually been scoping one out with a Climate to Thrive. I think some other people may be interested in one. We actually have a couple of drafts that we're working on, but I think we're a little ways away from having that on an ordinance, but it's out there. Yeah, and then I think this one is, I just have to do one other change related to the code enforcement officer permits and approvals, which will be a pretty straightforward one. Questions?
Are you anticipating us going through section 7 tonight?
We could go through it if you wanted to. It's up to you guys. Or I actually would be curious what you think about whether or not we should rush through this one or whether or not we should just try to, I don't say rush through, whether or not we could hammer through the subdivision ordinance or whether or not we should try a different approach.
There's a lot there.
I don't think that anybody except the planning board really needs to review the subject. Like we can talk about it at the Luso committee, but you guys are the ones that really have applied it lately. So your feedback is more appropriate, helpful. More than appropriate, I guess.
I personally have gone through section 7. I obviously have my typical kind of questions about lots of different things in it, but I don't think the answers are long essays. I think they're just, what does this mean, or so on and so forth.
Yeah, I'm here for you guys, so happy to spend as much time on it as you want.
It's up to you. You also need to talk about the quarry. I don't know.
Yeah, the core is just a quick procedural discussion, clarification, I should say.
Okay.
But you've got your ordinance open there, Gail.
I do. That's what I thought we were here to do.
So why don't you go have at it?
All right. Section 7. In the 7.1, pollution, I didn't understand, it says the slope, D, 7.11D, the availability of streams for disposal of effluents. When is that something that we would ever want to consider sanctioning, or, I mean, why, I don't understand why that is in there, why we'd ever wanna countenance liquid waste in a stream.
7.1,
7.1.1 pollution, 7.1 pollution, and then you go 7.1.1 D.
Mhm. D.
Subdivision will not result in undue water or air pollution. In making this determination, the planning board must at least consider the availability of streams for disposal of effluents.
Yep.
Does that mean if there isn't a stream, we don't need to worry about it? If there is, we need to make sure it won't happen? Is that what it's about? Is that what you're driving at?
Well, this is a statutory requirement, so it's reflective of whatever's in the state statute.
Oh, okay, all right, well, that's an answer.
But I'd have to put a little more thought into your question to be able to answer it well. Because I hadn't
Okay.
actually picked up on that before, that one.
I thought like, this sounds like we're like gonna consider,
Is that like a remnant, Noel, of like the overboard discharge?
It might be. Yep. So the proposed subdivision will not result in undue water or air pollution. In making this determination, the planning board must at least consider the availability of streams for disposal of effluents. Yeah, that's a good one. I'll have to do some research on that one.
okay. On to the next page, 7.1, anybody else should butt in here if you want.
No.
7.12, groundwater. Can you just educate me briefly on how we would determine or have somebody determine that the proposed subdivision will not adversely affect the quality or quantity of groundwater? Is there a standard procedure for doing that?
Yes, there are procedures that you can use to determine, to give you evidence that an application will not have a burden on the
Okay.
water. And that's they do well drawdown tests or other things that are related. Yeah, there are hydrogeological assessments you can do.
Thank you. In floodplain 7.13, are those, do we believe that those standards as written here, which have probably been around for a while, are still fit for purpose in our current and upcoming climate alterations? That's the 100-year flood elevation plan, and you've got to be at least a foot above. Is there any way should we be thinking about that, or should we just deal with it when we have to?
So are you looking at what's? You're still looking-
7.13.1.
Okay, there we go.
It's kind of a standard definition.
I mean,
Yeah, so what you're gonna rely on, what the applicants are gonna rely on is whatever the FEMA mapping is, which does get adjusted from time to time based on a different set of criteria.
Okay.
What, in light of the newer storms, so this would be like not necessarily a subdivision review criteria, but more people are looking at different sea level rise scenarios. There's like different modeling that people are doing that's a little more reflective of sea level rise change than maybe the floodplain is. But in the subdivision application, you want to make sure that they're not, we're not citing homes in the middle of a floodplain that we already know is mapped as part of the 100-year flood, or something like that, something to that effect.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay, thank you.
And also you can't count land, lot areas or as flood areas, as far as creating.
Okay. 7.16.1, I think contemporary format for writing a statute is to not have the A on the end. It's now MRS
Yep.
without the A. You just take the A out.
It's in there throughout a little bit.
Yeah.
I crossed all mine off.
Yep,
I
I'm gonna
know.
do it. I'm gonna do a search and replace for all those, Gail.
Thank you. And skipping a few pages, you'll be happy to hear. Can you, section 9, Additional review criteria for mobile home parks. I couldn't make sense of what you were actually saying in the first paragraph, at the very end, the provisions of this section VI-8 control. I wasn't sure what that referred to.
Yeah, let me go back and double check references to different sections of the ordinance to make sure it's what we mean it to be. Because
And
I
and
added some
this-
stuff above it and probably changed some things around a little bit.
Okay, and I had the same question at 9.1.
Yep, that would be
Um,
the same thing.
Yeah, now does the, when you're talking about the lot sizes and so forth for mobile homes, does 2003, does the new statute apply to any aspects of mobile home lots? And you know, being able to have other buildings on them,
Accessory building.
yeah,
No, it doesn't reflect mobile home. Well, if it doesn't, I don't think it deals with mobile homes specifically.
okay. Um. In the cluster subdivisions, so 10.2.4. Except for home occupations conducted in a dwelling unit, no commercial activity may be conducted on any lot or in any structure within a cluster subdivision. Why is that? For example, if they wanted to have a farm and a big garden and a farm stand or something like that, why would the town want to declare that the people who are forming this cluster subdivision and forming the guidelines by which they will operate, why would we want the town to say you can't do something simply because it's a cluster subdivision?
All right, can you give me the reference one more time? Because I think I
Sure.
have an answer, but I want
10.2 and it's 10.2.4.
to, okay. Hmm. Yeah, I think that's a policy question for the town. Certainly it's something we can delete. There's no statutory requirement to keep that in there.
Isn't that typically what developers put in their covenants?
Some do, yep.
Right.
I think what would be, you don't have to do it. You don't, I mean,
No.
it's, yeah, if you want to put it in as, if you're a
Yeah,
developer.
they can have it, but the town, like, for instance, a lot of times you see like no livestock, no home occupations, but the town doesn't enforce the covenants. If the
Right.
ordinance allows certain uses, it's up to the property owner and everyone else in that subdivision to either take away the covenant that was placed by the developer, if they wanna have chickens, or if they wanna have a home occupation, but the town, I've issued permits for home occupations. Because we don't enforce the covenants that, or the other restrictions that are placed on the developer who gets their subdivision approved.
Right. It just seems like cluster subdivisions tend to be a fairly intentional community by and large.
Mhm.
And there's a concept about what it is they will and won't do with one another and in that community. And as long as there's no compelling town reason why we should put that in there in a cluster subdivision that we might not have for individual lots, I'm not sure why we want to do that. There
Yep.
may be good, I just don't know what it is.
Nope, I think that's a good point. I may also suggest, what if you wanted to do a commercial cluster subdivision? Is that, I don't know if that's a bad thing, but if you have that permission, if you have that in there, then maybe you wouldn't be able to do that. But let me,
What I was thinking about it was, so it is allowing home occupation, so it's not like, I guess it's a matter of sort of thinking up the scenarios that they specifically apply to, but by clustering it, you're intensifying the residentialness of it. So it seems to me to make sense that the town might want to do that, that people want to move to places where it's reliable in the long run, what the conditions are that they're moving into. So by the town saying this is an intensely residential area and therefore you can have home occupation, but nothing else. You know, that you can't have a farm stand next door, that on Sundays, 25 cars are all piled up on the street next to you in this, because it's so intensely residential. I mean, that's why we have zones that are residential versus commercial, so people know what they're moving into and that there's some sense of reliability that it'll stay that way.
But this cluster subdivision might be in a zone that allows a farm stand or something like that on an individual lot. And we're just saying, because it's a cluster subdivision, the town is going to impose that requirement as opposed to building it into the cluster subdivision bylaws, that you can't do this. If they want to have those restrictions, they have means to do that. And I just don't know that it's the place of the town to.
It seems to me that it is up to the town to determine where residential and commercial activity happen. And a
Yeah.
farm stand and a farm is something that happens when people have larger lots. And when you say it's cluster, you're saying this is an intensely residential area. And therefore we're limiting what commercial activities you can be doing in there. That seems very compatible with what the town's code does.
But a lot of cluster subdivisions are a big parcel, relatively large parcel of land. And then the community of dwellings is on a confined section of the land, so that you actually have a lot of not, you don't have houses scattered here and there, but you have a lot of land around. So suppose the people in that community wanted to make use of some of that land, and obvious to me, it seems like, farm or something like that. And then they wanted to be able to sell some of the excess produce to raise money for the common facility that they have, which is, they usually also have in cluster subdivisions. I'm just not understanding why, if we might allow another large parcel of land that's owned by one person to have a farm stand, if we do, why would we say simply because it's a cluster subdivision? I think I've made that point. I won't make it again, but that's what I'm just not.
But if you own a large parcel of land as an individual and you decide you want to have a farm stand and all sorts of people are showing up to buy your vegetables on Sunday and driving in and out, you're not bothering anybody because it's only your property. Whereas if you live in this tiny little neighborhood and set up a farm stand in your driveway, and everybody starts coming to go buy your vegetables, you disturb the whole entire neighborhood.
But I guess I'm just assuming that the farm stand would be an activity of the cluster, not necessarily of the individual. And you're precluding the cluster community itself from being able to act in concert to do stuff like that. That's what I'm trying to get at, not that the guy who owns house 12B is going to become a farmer and start doing stuff. That's what I'm focusing on. I mean, you look at, I don't think they sell, but you look at like the cluster subdivision of Belfast. I mean, they have gardens and farming of some sort that they do there. And I would think if that community decided, well, let's try to sell some of this produce, that they wouldn't be allowed to do that under this ordinance. And
Wouldn't that fall under a home occupation?
Well, I think
That's what I was gonna
not, but it says in a dwelling. That's what this language is in.
Well, there's seasonal produce sales in the
Yeah.
ordinance,
Yeah.
which in parentheses says includes wood.
Yeah,
But then there's horticulture
yeah,
and agriculture,
yeah,
which is crops and selling the products and.
right.
There's distinctions of those uses in the ordinance. And what's considered commercial and like a seasonal produce stand. So if I wanna grow a garden
Mhm.
and I wanna put a structure up by the road, which meets setbacks, mind you. And I wanna sell pumpkins or watermelon,
Mhm.
whatever. It allows under a code enforcement permit for
Yeah.
somebody to do that.
Mhm.
But if you're looking at maybe, and this may be different, doing like, a big garden and, dogs and crops and stuff like that's different, I think.
It's a scale issue.
Yeah, anyway,
That much, is it that big of a difference to just ask them to be doing it at the local farmers? I mean, this is a very specific scenario. But if they really needed to, you know, to prevent the other things that you wouldn't want to happen, if you just said, we can go to the local farmers market and have a stand. And if you're talking about the whole entire cluster wanting to do it, you know, then they could rotate who mans the stand at the local farmers market. I mean, it's.
well, I've said my piece on it and and I'll just let it go with that. But I don't understand why that's in there.
No, is that state?
Nope. It's from the model, but I think it's definitely, this is a good discussion and I'll have to, maybe I'll put a little more thought into it and we can have a further discussion on it.
Moving on to 10.4, the vehicular and pedestrian systems, 10.4.2 roads. Why does it say access to all structures and lots within the cluster subdivision must be located on a new interior road system constructed as part of the development? I can't think of a situation in which it wouldn't be new, but maybe there are situations out there where there are existing roads. I just didn't know why the word new was in there. That's it. It's a small point.
Okay? I
Okay.
don't have a good answer right now.
Okay, moving on to 10.5.8 D in the very last line, you've got the Washington County Registry of Deeds. It should be obviously Hancock County.
All right, that's right. We are in Hancock County.
We are today and tomorrow, anyway. Okay, housing, I guess the housing cost, the definition in affordable housing density is that's all state language, isn't it?
Yes,
So, for example, I noticed for a rental unit, the cost of rent and any utilities, and they don't list like internet or digital utilities. I assume that's simply because it's not in the state law. Is that right?
correct.
Okay.
I pretty much took this right from the state.
Okay. When you get around to fine tuning 11.5 fractional density, I think there's a grammar issue in that sentence. Small one.
Fraction, not fractional.
Yeah.
Yep.
For fraction results, yeah.
Yep.
Can you, on 13.2, waivers of certain improvements? Can you just give me an example of what we're talking about here?
Which one are you on?
13.2, it's on page 33, so you know we're getting to the end. The planning board may waive certain required improvements when there are special circumstances of the development, such as the required improvements are not requisite to providing for the public health, safety, and welfare, and inappropriate because of inadequate or lacking connecting facilities adjacent to or in proximity to the proposed development. I don't need an answer to this, but I read it and I thought, well, I wonder what that means. I may find out at a later date, but I couldn't think of an example.
I mean, I can think of one example, but it probably is not applicable to this ordinance the way that I wrote it, which is some communities have the requirement that you have to connect through right of ways or whatever to the adjacent property so that you can have through, the big push several years ago was to make sure we had connecting streets, so there's not a ton of cul-de-sacs. So this would be a scenario where you might be able to waive that requirement.
Okay, section 14, 14.11 and 14.12 read exactly the same, and I'm just wondering if they should.
Probably not.
Okay. 15.1. when you talk about, if I could just understand this, the performance guarantees, when you talk about improvements in this context, are you referring to infrastructure? Just,
Mostly
it's not the
yep.
dwelling, it's just
Nope.
infrastructure.
Yep.
That's it.
Okay, thank you.
Most of the time it's related to, public infrastructure as well, like sidewalks or other things.
Okay, that's just from my education.
Yep.
Section 16.5. Development of subdivision without planning board approval should be a violation of law. Developing includes grading or construction of roads, grading of land lots, or construction of buildings which require plan approved. It doesn't include clearing of,
Well, not necessarily, because sometimes you do need to go in and do some clearing in order to do like the testing that we just talked about a little earlier, right? You need
Okay.
to be able to go in and do some of that stuff. I think the point here is, when you're in a subdivision review, you really aren't supposed to go in and start developing the subdivision until it's actually approved.
right. Thank you for bearing with me. Those are my questions.
That's
Good
great.
ones.
I'm glad you have read it. I've looked at it enough that sometimes some of these things get glazy in my eyes.
Yeah. I'm sure I'm sure I missed some.
Yeah,
Well, we'll have to
no,
read it again, but I'm gonna send out an updated version. We're gonna check in with Andy. Let's maybe keep going with this one and then and we'll have the discussion on this one on the 28th.
Okay,
Does that work for you guys? Like the planning board, that'll be the public hearing on the new subdivision rule, ordinance.
Uh-huh.
Which gives me a few weeks to put it in and then we'll have it like available for public viewing prior to that.
thank you.
Great, unless you guys have any other thoughts on it, but I think even in this version, it's probably better than the one that you have. A couple of things that I want to make sure we add to it are the appropriate road standards. We still need to make sure that if we keep that road waiver provision in there, we want to add that in. And then there's the, a few things that are kind of unique to Mount Desert, the, what is it, functional land division stuff. If that has to go into the subdivision ordinance, we need to keep that, so.
is
Okay.
the side yard setback waiver relative to the subdivision ordinance?
I don't think so. That's in the land use ordinance.
Oh, yeah.
Although Kim and I probably do have to do our due diligence here and note that, as per our town's attorney, that provision isn't necessarily, illegal.
Legal.
Mhm.
Duly noted.
Thoroughly.
It's been there since 1991.
Oh, my
That
God.
waiver,
Mhm.
so warned, once again.
Just waiting for a lawsuit.
Mhm.
Yep,
Yeah, I've heard this many times and I've just joined the plan.
anyway. Okay. Great. Thank you for, the comments, Gail.
You're welcome.
Any other thoughts on the subdivision ordinance? Got a lot of land use articles in the warrant this year.
Mhm.
We're gonna, yeah,
Going on in town, Noel.
what's that?
There's a lot going on in town.
Yes, and right after this, we're gonna get fired up about comp plans, right?
You,
Yeah.
you
Oh, yeah.
know it.
Okay. That was all I had.
Good.
Thanks, Noel.
Thank you.
Can I make a motion to adjourn?
Well, we got just procedurally one last thing, Meredith, just about the quarry. So we're, there's the remand on the quarry and I conversed with James on Friday and the consensus between him and I is that we both feel it would be unreasonable to ask Gail or Alan or expect them to review the cart from the last 10 years to qualify as participants in the review of the remand. So what that means is that we've got a quorum, and it would be myself, you, and Tracy reviewing the remand. And if we're aligned on that, then what James is gonna do is he's gonna write us a brief on specifically giving us our marching orders on what we're looking at.
What is a remand?
Well, the Superior Court sent it back to us.
I can read it, I
Yeah.
have it in here.
Like,
I would love to read it.
No, I don't understand any of the language. What do you, so what, they've reviewed it? Is there a verdict?
Yes.
yes,
There's a conclusion. So it says the town of Mount Desert Planning Board's denial of plaintiff's Harold McQuinn Inc. and Freshwater Stone Brickwork Inc. application to permit existing quarrying activities pursuant to the town of Mount Desert's quarrying license ordinance for failure to comply with the ordinance's purpose statement was legal error. The denial is reversed. So the decision you made on compatibility.
with the purpose of the QLO, and that was, James said that was just kind of expected. But, so that's part one of
That's
it.
part one. So the second one is that the issue of whether plaintiffs possess sufficient right, title, or interest in the access road to their quarry site is remanded to the planning board for findings of fact adequate for judicial review.
So that's part two, Meredith. Remember, we had the whole right, title, and
Yeah,
interest
those are
thing
your
about
two findings.
Musetti's, ability to negate any of that. And so that's what James is going to give us our brief on, is what we are reviewing relative to that specific remand.
Remands are sort of clarifications of our
A
decision.
remand, I mean, Gail, how would you describe?
A remand is a decision by the court to send the case back to you to see that the planning board then acts consistent with what the court has ruled. So the court has ruled, it appears, that your decision that the application did not meet the compatibility standards was in error. So they need you to correct that decision. And they need you to, it appears as though they did not find the record or the form of the record that was submitted to them for review with regard to Musetti's Road was adequate. And we've had these conversations about, and Maine Municipal drives this hard bargain of saying that, and I'm sure Andy does too, that you can't just, you have to, the court has no tolerance for sitting and reading through reams of documents. They want the record, the official record, like you just did for Heel Way. They want that to be complete and easily accessible for them. They don't want to sit and read that card, and they're not going to.
In a nutshell, Meredith, we're gonna have to clarify the road issue.
Yes.
Again,
So it'll be just you three,
it's just us three.
and that's it.
Mazel tov.
So. Okay,
Can we get Gail's help?
Yeah, we're gonna get some marching orders from James on it.
Do you have a time? Do you understand the timeline? What is the timeline?
I don't think there's a specific timeline indicated in it. But having said that, this is something we need to do sooner rather than later. And I'm sure the applicant is gonna be on us about it too. So we probably shouldn't discuss more about that at this point. But just wanted to, more than anything else, make sure you guys were okay with it just being us three.
That's fine with me.
Meredith, you're nodding your head, yes.
what else are we gonna do? I mean,
Yeah.
tell- I wish they'd go away.
That's it.
All right, we're good. Now we can have a motion to adjourn.
I make a motion to adjourn.
Second that.
All right, all of you online, Tracy,
Tracy Keller, I.
Meredith,
Randolph, I.
and all of us here.
I,
Aye.
the Bruce Flores.
Drive safe.